HTML5 significantly alters the way we gather data in forms. The biggest changes are to the input types, which now include such specialized input types as date, time, month, week, range, and then there's an input type for searching, for telephone numbers, for email addresses. There's a color picker as an input type. And then there is a new related type called data list. In addition, there are two new displays that are very close to each other, the progress bar and the meter. Let's take a look at each of these by building a simple form. To get started, we're going to download the latest version of WebMatrix from Microsoft.com/web/WebMatrix. This is a free download and will make working on a Windows operating system much simpler. As noted earlier, you can, of course, use virtually any editor on any platform. Let's create a new empty site, and within that empty site, let's rename that to HTML5 Forms Demo. We will add a new file. Let's start with an HTML file, and it's very important to call this index because that's what your browser is going to look for by default. So we'll call this index.html. Notice that WebMatrix pre-configures the file with the new HTML5 doc type HTML, and with a header, a title, and let's call this demo HTML5, and a body. And what we'll do is we'll put into the body just the word hello so that we can make sure everything is working. Let's save that and run that. We'll run that in Google Chrome, and that's working, and we can proceed. We're going to minimize Chrome rather than closing it, as it does tend to take a few seconds to start up. Let's create a second file, and we'll make that a CSS file. Call it My Styles. And we can tie that into our index.html in the header with a link tag. Set the relationship equal to style sheet and set the href equal to mystyles.css. And that way we can use CSS to do a little bit of styling on our application as we proceed. Within the body of our application, after our little hello, we can create a form, and let's give that form an ID. And much of our work will be done inside that form. The first thing we would like to look at is one of the new input types. Let's look at the date input type. So we'll create a label for our date, and we'll use the for property to associate this label with our input, and we'll call it date input. We'll need to be sure to set the ID on our input to that. And let's give a prompt. After the label, we can create our input. And here we're going to set the type equal to, and you can see we now have a great many choices. We'll choose date, and remember to set the ID to date input. We're now ready to run that. Let's run that in Google Chrome. Chrome comes back up, and we have a date picker. You can see that we can enter this manually if we want, or we can use the drop down to pick a date, working our way through the months and choosing a date, or we can use the increment and decrement buttons to pick our date. The specification does not say what the date input should look like, and so the browser manufacturers are free to make it look however they choose. We can complement the date input that we just completed by adding a time input. Once again, we'll use a label, and then we say input type equal time. Set the ID, and we're ready to try this out as well. Let's run this in Google Chrome. And you can see that we have a time input, and I can enter a value, or I can use the up and down arrows to set the value. And this is on a 12-hour clock, so 12:10 p.m. is the time. Now you'll remember that I mentioned that the look and feel is up to the browser implementation. And if we go back to the application and run it instead in Opera, we get a very different kind of time box, one in which we can set the hour, but the hour is in military time, so 3 o'clock would be 1500. And that's entirely up to the browser implementation, although of course you can greatly affect the look and feel of everything on your page with CSS. Two other types that can be very useful are the input type of month and the input type week. Let's start by looking at the input type of month. We'll save the page, bring the Chrome browser back, and since it's already running, we can hit refresh. And here we have our prompt, please select a month. And you can see that you can type J and have it jump to the month that you want. You can use the up and down arrows to pick through the months, or you can use the drop down and work your way through the months till you find the one you want. Returning to our code, we have a label, please select a week, and a new input type equal week. And then let's bring back our Chrome browser and update it. And you can see, please select a week, and we can pick with the up and down arrows, or we can use the drop down and say we'd like to pick the 25th week of 2013.